Alright, boys and girls, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a login form. And I'm going to show you the difference between get and post, the two methods to send information using a form. Alright, so let's get going. Here's our web page, and the first thing you need for a form is the form tag. So it looks like this. So there's your form tag. And all your form controls are going to go inside this. There's some important attributes to add to the form, but I'll add them in a little bit. And to lay out your form, there's a couple ways to do it. One way is to use tables. So that's the way I'm going to show you right now. It's actually the easy way to do it without CSS. So we're going to need a table inside of our form, like this. Alright, and so this is going to be a login form. Let me give it a header. Login form. Alright, so it's a login form, and what we're going to do is we're going to collect two pieces of information. We're going to collect an email and a password, and send that information to a script on a web server somewhere. Alright. So we need two things, the email and the password. So let's start with the email. So I'm going to make a row, and in this row we'll have a header where we're going to say email. Okay. And then we'll also have, I guess, a regular table cell that has the email form control. Alright. So here's what that looks like. It's called an input. And there's a few different types of inputs. This one is type equal text. And that's the attribute. It tells us that we're collecting some text. And what else does it have? Well, it needs a name. Name equals email. This is something I came up with. I'm calling it name. You could call it whatever you want, but usually you want to call it what you're collecting. So we're collecting email. And then we also want to give it an ID. ID equals email. Now the ID attribute is it's an identifier for an element. Anything can have an ID. This H1 can have an ID. You know, anything can have an ID. But they have to be, they can't be the same. No two things can have the same ID. Like I couldn't give, you know, this. I couldn't give this the same ID as the H1. It's not allowed. All right. Anyway. Okay. Anyway, so here for our input, type is text. It gives us this little text bar here. The name is email, and the ID is EM. Okay? And then we need to have a password. So we'll make a new row. Now, actually the smart way to do it would be to copy this row and paste it, and then make your changes. But I'm just going to type it out because it won't take too long. Alright, so here's our new row. This is going to be our password. Password. Alright. And so here, this is another input. This time the type is password. We're going to set the name equal to pass and the ID equal to PW. Okay. So now we have an email. We're collecting the email and the password. Alright, so up here. And the difference between an email and a password is that for the password, when you type, it hides what you're typing with these little circles. Alright, so we have our email collector, our password collector, and now we need a button, a way to submit the form. So we'll add another row. And alright, so for this row, we'll add an input. This time the type is submit. And we're going to give it a value equals. And whatever you type in the value is what will show up in the button. So if I typed in login now, then that's what's going to show up in the button. And what I'm going to do is, since we only have this one button here, we don't need 2 columns, so I'm going to use call span 2. Like that. You could do that, or another thing you could do is you could, instead of using call span, let's say we wanted to have this th. We could just have an empty th here. That would line it up with the, that's actually better. It lines it up with the other text boxes. So here's our login form. Now if you click login, nothing happens because it doesn't have anywhere to send the information to yet. That's where we, there's 2 attributes we have to add to the form element to get it to work. One is the method. And the method is either going to be get or post. And I'll show you the difference between those in a second. So let's say we use get for now. And then the action is where we're sending it to. So I have a URL here. This is a script on my website that I created that handles form submissions. And all it does is it takes whatever information you give it and it displays it on the screen. That's what this script does. Alright, so let's see. Let's test it out. Let's give it an email address. Here's my email address. I'll type in my secret password. And I'll hit login now. And then it goes to, this is the page. So here's the page it sends it to. MrTopel.com, handle form submission. And then when you use get, use the get method, here's how it sends the data. It adds a little question mark and then adds the name and the value of each form control. So here we have email equals, and then here's the email address. And then use an and pass equals, and then this was my password I sent. Notice it's not very secure if it sends it up here in the URL like this. Alright, so that's the get method. It sends the information, it attaches it to the end of the URL like this, in name equal value pairs. Alright, so that's the get method. So let me show you the post method. So instead of get, let's use post this time. Post. And okay, here we go. So here's I haven't to our H1. Okay. So anyways, post now. Let's type in an email address. And I made different password, hit login. Wait a minute. It says, oh, it's not connected anymore. That's why. I was wondering why it was. Okay, here we go. Alright, so email address. Type in my password, hit login now. This time it's using the post method. So it's sending it hidden, like it doesn't show, it doesn't add a question mark or anything. It sends it so it doesn't attach it to the, you know, the query string here. It sends it kind of like in the background. And usually this, you want to use post if you're, you know, sending anything, you know, that you don't want people to see, like, you know, passwords and stuff. All right. So that is our first form. And I hope you enjoyed it.